Hello, it's Mrs. Poe. Today we're reading Basho and the River Stones, written by Tim Myers and illustrated by Oki S. Han. A haiku is a short poem of 3 lines and 17 syllables. Haiku was invented in Japan and perfected by the great poet Basho. It's still very popular, both in Japan and around the world. And the story starts. Matsu Basho is Japan's most famous poet, but few people know how he came to be the lifelong friend to the foxes. At first he came to live near the Fuka River. Basho discovered a cherry tree on his property and agreed to share its cherries with the local foxes. For a long time, things were peaceful between Basho and the Fox clan, and there was a great harmony. But then some of the clan grew impatient and greedy, and one young fox, particularly fond of cherries, decided to play a trick on the poet. Japanese foxes have great magic. They're especially good at transforming things like themselves. So the young fox made himself look like a yamabushi, a wandering monk, and he picked 3 stones out of the river. These he turned into gold coins. The fox knew Basho was poor, so when he approached the poet's bare little hut and saw Basho reading in the sunshine, he said in his best monk voice, "A good-hearted merchant gave me these coins, and I want to do kindness with them in return. I notice that the foxes all around here look very hungry. If I give you these coins, will you sign a paper saying that you'll leave the cherries of your beautiful tree only for them?" Basho was quite hungry himself. He had little money or food since he spent his time riding and wandering in the woods and fields. And cherries, though delicious, only came once a year. So he agreed, setting the coins carefully on the low table in his hut. And then he picked up his calligraphy brush and wrote what the fox monk had suggested, signing it with his name. At that, the monk went on his way, of course, chuckling to himself. The next day, the young fox couldn't wait to sneak up to the hut. He wanted to see how angry Basho would be once he noticed that the magic wore off and the coins turned back to stones. But then he peeked in the window and he saw Basho riding, with a huge smile on his face and 3 river stones on the table before him. The fox was confused. Suddenly, Basho noticed that the fox's ears were sticking up above the window ledge. "Ah, Kitsune," he called out. Basho happily said, "Come and see what good fortune I've had." The furious fox trotted around the hut and came in through the door. "Yesterday a monk visited me," Basho began, "and paid me with 3 gold coins to leave all the cherries for you foxes. But some fox must have tricked the monk, because they weren't really coins at all. This morning they turned into river stones. You see how beautiful they are?" The poet held up one of the water-rounded stones, admiring the smooth surface and rich color. "At first I was angry and disappointed to lose the gold," Basho continued. "How foolish that was. Suddenly, as I looked carefully at the stones, I understood, and the poem came to me." how many years have these stones loved the river, not knowing that they were poor? When he heard this, the young fox was amazed, and suddenly he felt ashamed. "Master," the fox said sorrowfully, "forgive me. I'm the one who tricked you, pretending to be a monk. I was blind and I was selfish, but you understood what was really important. I should have remembered that many things are more valuable than gold." Basho looked around in surprise, but then he nodded. "A good poem is worth more than money, and it lasts much longer," he said. "Thank you for being honest with me, Kitsune." "And thank you for teaching me," the fox said, and then he bowed low and left. The fox returned to his lair with a heavy heart. Sitting alone, he wondered how he could ever repay the debt of gratitude he now owed Basho. Then it came to him, the 3 ryo he had buried beneath the stone lantern at the temple of Inari. These gold coins, real ones, could buy the poet enough food to last for the whole winter. The fox dug them up and returned to Basho's hut. "Master," he said seriously, "you must let me tear up that paper you signed, giving us foxes all the cherries. I was dishonest with you. It shouldn't count." But Basho couldn't hear of it, and as the fox had expected. "I'm afraid I can't let you do that," Basho said. "I accept your kind apology, but I've already signed the paper. It would be dishonorable to pretend that I hadn't." "Then at least let me pay you for the cherries," the fox pleaded, showing Basho the coins, asserting him that they are real. "Ah, Kitsune, I don't mean to be difficult, but you already paid me for the cherries. The river stones that you gave were beautiful, and they helped me find a poem. That was more than enough. My honor won't allow me to accept charity." Again, the fox left, feeling guilty and perplexed. Slowly, he made his way through the woods for the banks of the Fuka River, pausing there with his head hung in shame. But he happened to glance at the purling water and noticed, just beneath its surface, more beautiful river stones. Suddenly, he lifted his head and smiled. "Now I know what to do," he told himself. The next day, he returned to Basho's hut, carrying a small bag. Basho frowned when he saw the fox approaching again. Would the creature try to give him the coins again? "Master," the fox said, bowing deeply, "I thought about what you said, and I understand. Today I have come, not with charity, but with a small gift to show my appreciation." At that, the fox turned the little bag upside down, and out tumbled 3 beautiful river stones. Basho's face broke into a glowing smile. "Ah, Kitsune," he said, "what a perfect gift. Yes, I accept them, and perhaps they'll inspire another poem." Thank you, you are so kind." The fox could hardly contain his happiness, but then he said, hesitating a little, "So you promise to keep them as a gift?" "Of course," said Basho, reaching down to stroke the fox's head. "Oh, master," the fox said, "I am so pleased." And with that, he scampered off. That night, before Basho went to his sleeping mat, he looked at the 3 new stones where he had set them on his table. Then he smiled to himself and blew out the candle. When he woke up with the sun the next morning, he sat up and stretched, and then suddenly he stopped. For there on the table, just where he had left the river stones, were 3 gold coins glinting in the light from the windows. Basho hurried and went to the table, picking up each of the gold coins and feeling it. They were real. He was sure of it. Looking closer, he realized that they were the same coins the fox had tried to give him before. Suddenly, he understood and burst out laughing. They hadn't been river stones at all. The magical fox had tricked him again. What a clever kitsune, the poet said to himself. For he knows I must keep a promise, even one he tricked to me into making. So Basho picked up the coins and said a quick little prayer of gratitude. Knowing he could buy food for the winter, thinking the fox might be watching from somewhere, he went to the door and stepped outside to call him. But all he saw was a paper fastened to the wall of the hut, and the paper read, "Dear Master, thank you again for promising to keep the gift. And just as the first river stones inspired you to write a haiku, this has inspired me." This has inspired me to write a poem. And the poem reads, "I've eaten cherries alone, but they are much sweeter when shared with a friend." Ah, kitsune, thought Basho. So from then on, Basho and the foxes shared the cherries as before, and of course they shared many other things.